I am Professor Luis Barbosa. I'm going to talk a little bit today about generative AI. So let me share my screen. So let me start with a short video on the topic. In a second. I hope this sounds all right. Let's see it.
So with AI, you can do existing use cases better than before, right? So you can improve search. For example, you can improve moderation in social networks. You can improve communication by adding virtual backgrounds, for example, to this video. You can also create completely new use cases that were just not possible before, right? You can generate image from text. You can generate 3D from text. You can like recognize voice and translate that. You can create better conversational AI. So it really opens up a new range of possibilities. The same way the previous generation of technology created the ability for machines to calculate better or to retrieve information better with search engine. There's a whole range of new use cases that weren't possible before that are now made possible by machine learning. The hype that we're seeing now is just a catch up on the previous wave of usage. This is very different, for example, than crypto, where you had a lot of hype, but very little usage. I think it's quite sustainable. And as we see more use cases, more usage, more companies investing on the topic in 2023, hopefully it's going to become more and more of a mainstream topic and more central topic. What we want is for everyone to understand AI, understand what it can do, what it can't do, some of the challenges associated with it. For example, biases are a big challenge for AI systems today. We want everyone to, understand that so that they can, help us mitigate some of the risk and make sure it doesn't create more challenges.
So there are a number of issues.
All right. So I'm going to leave the link for the whole video here on the chat. Feel free to access and explore more. So we heard the CEO from Hugging Face. Hugging Face, I'd say, is a competitor of OpenAI, which is probably the main company right now leading the initiatives. And Hugging Face has something equivalent to OpenAI, but as an open source model. Throughout his presentation, you saw the use case, right? So ChatGPT, definitely one of the first one with this idea of interaction, with the idea of a prompt in which we can generate new content, new text. So all about generative AI, it's about creating new content, right? In different formats, either text, images, audio, coding, and so on. And he also showed very little pieces over there in the presentation. Some of the tools, especially again for this main provider, OpenAI, some of the tools, which is ChatGPT, DALL-E, and Codex, are gonna exactly play around with those. So let's get started. So let's start with ChatGPT as I mentioned, and you can start asking whatever you want to know about it, whatever topic. Of course, the topic for us is generative AI, ChatGPT, and so on. It's all very good questions to start with. It can be very helpful once you're learning a new topic, even separate from this. It can be like assistant that can ask questions, improve your understanding. If you're learning, for instance, how to code, it can even generate code for you. Give you information about particular topics, particular elements, right? So let's give it a try. Let's say, I don't know, how do ChatGPT works? Taking a while, it's processing. So yeah, very interesting. So there's a huge type of pre-training. So ChatGPT, it's trained in a large body of content. So information that's available on the web. The training process demands too much energy time, and once it's ready, it's capable of processing many different information, right? And that's called a whole field called LLMs, large language models. So it's a language model. So we interact in text base through this prompt here, right? So there is a conversational aspect of it. There's a chat. And the content generated here, of course, as you see, it's text, right? And again, there is a whole process to train it, ingest and process large volume of text of language. That's called the whole area called LLMs, large language model, right? And yeah, it's saying what's the process of training, encoding, this whole architecture based on transformers. Transformers is how the model is structured. But even from that, a more, let's say, a comprehensive test, you can ask something like summarize it. So the short version, it's more or less as we're talking, right? So ChatGPT in the end, it's a model with a technology called transformers that involves a process of pre-training with large body of content. The LLM idea, right? That's interesting. What else? We can not only work with text, generating text as we're doing here, but we can also generate other formats of content like images. So for that, there is another tool from OpenAI called DALL-E, right? DALL-E. I don't know if you have access to it. There is a little cost involved. You should have a key to it, but anyhow, you can describe all of these images that's displayed here. None of those were generated by humans or by an artist. It's all images that were generated by this tool, by AI. So it can describe something, and then it can create an image based on your description. And I could have like poor description or something tricky that I can do here, or smart that I can do here. Let me change some context. Let me create a new session. Yeah, and I can ask for ChatGPT generate a more comprehensive description of a short description I throw, and then I can throw this comprehensive description into DALL-E and then generate a very nice image. So I'm gonna ask him to generate a more comprehensive description of me and my friend. Yeah, he didn't get the idea. Let me rephrase that. Yeah, let me try a new session. I guess it got lost. Yeah, here it is. Awesome. So I rephrase it a little bit. That's probably the tricky part. You're going to see other examples, how you structure and how you execute this whole prompting mechanism called actually prompt engineering. So in order to achieve the results that you want, you have to experiment some variations. So I'm gonna get this whole description here, and then feed the OEE, so the OEE can generate an image of my graduation day, right? So it's processing, taking a while. I'm gonna generate a couple variations on the theme, and let's see what he come up with. So yeah, so we're working. Let him finalize the work. So the OEE generate those images. I guess it's it's awesome. And if you notice, there is some details. I like most of them. I could ask for variations, but if there is some subtleties, so like proper faces, he tried to blur a little bit, so not associated with particular persons. Naming rights also in other copyright material. So even I mentioned explicit about FIU, and from that ChatGPT got the context of Miami, but the FIU naming is not never appears here. And even the location, right? It's not exactly FIU location. It's a generic universe ambience, right? And from here, I could ask for variations of it, but let's say that I'm fine with this one, looking great. So again, we start generating text, now generate images, and we can keep moving forward. Let's try something else. We like to experiment quite a lot with this feature or this tool here on Khan Academy. I don't know if you heard about this. It's called Self-Portrait. It's some JavaScript that generate basic forms, and using the basic forms, the idea that I can create a self-portrait of my own image, right? So I can, instead of me doing, let me ask ChatGPT to do it. The detail here, and I mentioned about the idea of prompt engineering. ChatGPT for now, and one of the response that you get previously is that he says, "Oh, the whole pre-training process that I had or ChatGPT had was limited to September 2021, right?" So he's not aware of things like this particular thing of Khan Academy, the self-portrait thing. He knows basic JavaScript. He learned JavaScript from this pre-training process, but this particular JavaScript functions related to forms and use it here in self-portrait, he's not aware, but you can train it to be aware of. So I can copy this whole context and feed into ChatGPT so he's contextualized, or I'm doing this prompt engineering, right? So I can ask something, let me create a new context here. Please create self my graduation self-portrait, keep in mind that I wear glasses and yeah. So using these JavaScript functions that I pasted here. So using this JavaScript function, please create my self-portrait. Keep in mind that I wear glasses, don't forget my cap. I give some descriptions, right? And now some context. You're gonna have this idea and be able to generate this JavaScript code, right? Yeah, here it is. Yes, it's ready already. Let me copy it here and throw it back at Khan Academy self-portrait. Let's see what it comes up with. It's processing. Let's see. It may have some little mistakes. Let's check it out. Depending on what it is, we can solve on the fly. Oh yeah, it's complaining about create canvas. ChatGPT uses this function that's not really available. And here it is. Oh, looking good. I guess better than I was expecting. And my glass, my cap, it's I guess it's good enough, right? Okay, let's try something else. Let's try something else. I can use ChatGPT, for instance, to fetch data. Let's say that, again, it's always good to open session for particular context. So if you keep asking different questions within the same session, you assume that's all correspond to same context. If you want to switch topic, create a new I recommend that you create a new session. So I'm asking here about, give me please poverty and employment rates from 2000 to 2019, and I limited myself to 2018 because again he's trained up to information from late 2021, right? Anyhow, I have here these informations. Here it is, and I can ask him, for instance, some Python code, from programming code, let's say Python, to work with this data. Again, if you're not familiar with coding at this point, no worries. Actually, a very good way to start learning programming, it's through ChatGPT. Ask about the topic, ask for some code. It's a very good tool to help you ramp up your coding skills. But yeah, so I asked here for him to use that data that just gathered and create a Python code to generate a line chart using those code. Even if again, if you don't understand this code, it's fine. You can play around a little bit, and then we're gonna move to the third and last tool from OpenAI that we're gonna cover today. It's Codex. It's a tool, especially in terms of generate and analyzing programming code for different languages. I'm gonna stick with Python for now. So let's try. And we can have a separate session to discuss some of the parameters. This kind of parameters, it's available in most of the tools like temperature, subsequences, and so on, different models, and so on. But even on Codex, we have the edit functionality, the chat. But for now, let's focus on the complete one. Again, we can have a separate session to go over those details. And I'm going to paste this code here. And I can do some things like, if I ask to run it, you can try to run it. Like in every interaction where I deal, I recommend you do interaction with comments, so it doesn't affect the code itself. So the comments on Python is these hashes. So I can ask for run it. In order to run it, it wouldn't make much of a sense because I'm trying to generate a graph, and the graph is not really supported by Codex for now. But anyhow, what would be interesting would be something like, oh, explain me. If you get, when you learn how to code, you get codes from the web, from a friend, and you don't properly understand, you can keep asking questions like this, and the tool could help you again on your learning curve. So it explained the code. So the code use matplotlib from Python and then generate a line graph with the x-axis with the dates, the years, and the y-axis with the two information that we have, poverty rates and employment. But let's try something else. I cannot show graphs, but I could print the values of these arrays, right? And I could, even if I don't know the code, I could ask, please generate the code. Let's see what we come up with. Here it is. All right. He generated the codes, and I can ask him to, or it to run it. Here it is. It's executing, showing the rates for poverty and unemployment, right? I can ask to generate more code. I have already the line chart. I can ask for generate the bar chart. All right, let me get all this code and let's move to a separate environment. Because things from here, I could get this code and move directly to a Python environment and execute directly. Instead, I move it to Codex to do this exercise that we did here to generate new code, as comments, I'm going to see in a minute, ask for corrections and so on. But if I wanted to run this code, either the first code that was generated or this additional code that I got here, I could go to a Python environment, any Python environment that you prefer. I like quite a lot an environment called Colab that's available freely on Google environments, Google accounts from Google Drive. I found very useful to use. So I can create a new, more collaboratory. If you don't see it, just hit down below here, there's add more apps and you can add it. Double check if the menu it's available. More, yeah, connect more apps in case you don't see it. I have it mine here. This is a virtual cloud machine that Google's offering me or us for free. Can paste my code here, hit play. You're gonna allocate, it's creating a cloud machine. Again, up to certain limit, it's totally free. It's a reasonable limit, like 100 gigabytes of disk and 12 gigabytes of RAM. It's good enough. So I executed the whole code that I got from generative AI. Then I see here my line chart, right? I see the correlation between unemployment and poverty. As people get unemployed, there's a direct correlation on poverty. You see the movements a little bit smoothed on the poverty line. So not everybody that got unemployed go direct to poverty. There is some social program, some buffer here to support that. But of course, you see a direct correlation here, right? And also more or less the same. If I compare those rates, I have the bar chart here, or the bar could have two bar charts if it was the case. But anyhow, let's say that's working great. Let's say that I had a typo here. Instead of generate the Y label, I had tried to generate a Z label that doesn't exist. If I were coding whatever code, and I came up with an error. So I have an error here, right? Let's try to solve this error with the support of Codex. So here I'm going to have the Y label, and I tried Z label incorrectly. And I can ask OpenAI or Codex to what's wrong with this code. And it's going to solve for me. It generated the correct code, and now it's finalized the explanation. Oh, it stopped the explanation. Let me try to redo it. Yeah, there is no y-axis. You mentioned Z label, which is correct. I have to correct it to y, right? Yeah, so that's nice. Let's try something else. Besides program language, another famous language, it's called SQL. It's a language that you interact with databases. So I have here a course for SQL. So SQL is structured query language. It's the language that you use to interact, to gather data and manipulate the data into databases. So I have this intro course for SQL. You can try it. You can use ChatGPT to help you with things like what SQL, with databases, how to create tables, how to query data, and so on. But yeah, so here's some introductions. Let's try some exercise that they have here. Yeah, they have here, for instance, this table with people and locations, ages, and so on. Again, the same idea of contextualize ChatGPT, and so he can answer questions. So we're going to show this table structure to him. Let's go back to ChatGPT. Again, as a new context, let's create a new session. Let's add something based on this table, this structure. Then here it is, and let's see some of the exercise. Yeah, something like that. What's the query? what is the SQL query to display your columns for everyone that's over 40 years old? Here it is. Here's the query. And let's try that. Can try that. Executing. Yeah, and he got like 4 people that's over 40. So John, Ginger, Mary, Erica. And you can validate your answer with the rubrics here. So it's exactly the same. Select start from info or age greater than 40. Exactly. So again, you don't have to be familiar with SQL. I'm saying exactly the opposite, right? One very good place to help you learning new things like SQL and manipulating databases is through, for instance, a tool like ChatGPT, alongside with Codex, play around, do work your exercise. It's helpful not only to learning, but actually on day-to-day of professional work. It's helpful, of course, with much more complex queries than this. It can be applied. And the last thing that I want to exemplify here, mainly in the context of the professional work. So as you use it here and use ChatGPT on his own interface at the professional scene, let's say a company, an e-commerce company, and create a bot that is interactive with their customers, and they want to respond to questions for your customers or something like that. And behind that, instead of having a whole complete new code or actual persons doing that, a company could create an integration between their website and ChatGPT and drive these interactions of their customers and the information that I want to understand from their website, right? These kind of integrations, it's are called agents, and you can create your own agents, right? Again, I don't want to get in the details of this kind of coding, but let's get a grasp of the idea, and let's even use GPT to jumpstart this. Generate a simple code to connect with Chat GPT API to ask what is GenAI. Here it is. Here's the code again. It's not a complex code anyhow, but again, don't bother about the code itself. Let me correct my last code here. Yeah, so it's important API. There is a key of like a password. I'm gonna put mine here in a minute. There is a question, what's GenAI? And he create a connection with a particular model. I'm not sure if this model is available to my license. I can try it. And based on this connection, he gonna connect with GPT server and get the response and print the response on the screen. Right? It's a simple code. Let me give it a try. Let me try something different. Yeah, so I changed the model to GPT 3.5 Turbo. That other one I don't have access to it. But anyhow, the code is simple enough. It's similar enough and simple enough. I connect to the GPT server, submit my credentials, the questions that I want to ask GenAI, and I can keep this interactive if I wanted to, right? But anyhow, we responded. So GenAI, known as generative AI, is a field of AI that are able to generate new content, and content again in different formats. Could be text, as we saw it. Could be images. Could be sounds. Could be code. Could be many different formats as we explored. Right. So We explored the proper ChatGPT. We explored DAO-E to generate images. We explored codecs to generate, analyze, correct code. That is other options. I hope you guys like it. That's pretty much it. So see you guys soon. Bye-bye.